Baron Frankenstein is laying low and working as a doctor at an asylum as he takes on a young protege inspired by his work. Sound cool? Because I'm here to talk about Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell from 1974. The original Frankenstein monster is one of my favorite characters in horror history, and definitely, I'd say, yeah, definitely my favorite Universal monster. It's hard to choose. I mean, not so much Dr. Frankenstein, but it's his monster that I like. I suppose we all call the monster Frankenstein, even though we know it's not correct. And that just goes to show how much more interesting he is than his creator. Dr. Frankenstein is brilliant, sure, but he's kind of a dick. It's the monster that has always drawn me in. I mean, he looks cool. He's basically an early version of a zombie. And of course I'm drawn to, the sad characters. And I mean, of course, all of the Universal monsters are, which is what makes them so cool, all the different layers to them. They aren't just monsters, they all have a sad story and an aura of sorrow. None of them want to be monsters, they all want love and a regular life, but they know that, they can never have those things. And to me, at least, Frankenstein's monster is the saddest of them all. This film is, of course, one of the Hammer horror films, and interestingly enough, the final Hammer film until they made a sort of comeback, decades later. It was directed by Terence Fisher, who had been directing since the late 40s, so he had directed a handful of Frankenstein films, and oddly enough, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell was his final film. So, just to get this going, I'm not a massive fan of this one. I mean, it's not bad at all, but I find it just kind of a tad boring, maybe a little uninspired. And it's kind of a bummer that Hammer would end on this note, and an end to, Terence Fisher's Frankenstein series and his career, no less. And it's not that I have much to complain about it, but I might start with the title, and it's actually a very cool title. Like, what has that slippery Baron Frankenstein gotten into this time? Something evil? Something hellish? Just downright sinister? And he really hasn't. I find it to be a little misleading. And like in just about every Frankenstein film, you have him, reanimating something. Maybe something new, maybe something he's already done. This time around, it's like an ape-like creature that he wants to modify with a human brain. I understand the budget here was no doubt small, but I think the look of the monster leaves a lot to be desired. It's like a standard-looking fursuit with a rubber mask instead of makeup or prosthetics, which would have been so much better. The two leads are great, and play off each other very well. Of course, we have the legend himself reprising the role of Baron Frankenstein, Peter Cushing. And of course, I would have it no other way. For his younger counterpart, we have Dr. Simon Helder, played wonderfully by Shane Bryant. Simon is a young, ambitious scientist, very much inspired by Frankenstein's work. He's been trying to replicate some of the mad scientist's legendary experiments, but to no avail. And he ends up getting caught and is sent to an asylum for what the court deems witchcraft. And as fate would have it, he is sent to the very asylum that Dr. Frankenstein works at. And the Baron is impressed by Simon's experience and skill and hires him as his personal assistant. Simon soon learns about Frankenstein's current experiment and begins to doubt his morals and ethics. There are definitely lines that he won't cross. And as usual, Frankenstein puts science before humanity, and he'll do, anything it takes for his experiments to succeed. And the dichotomy between the two doctors works very well, and you can feel Simon's disappointment, and it's a lesson in always being careful about meeting your idols. Peter Cushing, chews the scenery with every second of screen time, as he always does. And like in every Frankenstein story ever, there's an element of sadness, with the monster resenting its new life, a life that it did not ask for. But it's pretty mild here. You feel for the monster, but not as intensely as you did for the original Frankenstein's monster. There needed to be more tension for me to stay engaged and care more than I did. And again, I didn't hate this film. It's perfectly watchable, and it's memorable enough, but it felt like a sequel just for another sequel's sake. Though there were slightly new elements, it just isn't enough to make it very interesting or to stand out, from all the other Frankenstein films. It's worth watching for the two leads, and especially if you're a Peter Cushing fan, but I don't see myself revisiting this anytime soon. So I'm giving Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell a 5.5 out of 10. I hate saying anything negative about any of the Hammer films. I'm a big fan. But hey, you win some, you lose some, and you really can't ever have too much Peter Cushing. Cheers, guys.